Hey guys, welcome back. So for this one, we're jumping back into Al Ewing's Immortal Thor, where at this point we get to see the all-new Thor core in action. But on top of that, we come to find out that Ewing is cooking up a lot of things in this series, and some of them may very well change the truth as we know it. So with that said, let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top to get all notifications so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so for this one, when we come back, we start out from the beginning, and I'm talking about the primordial demiurge beginning, when the Elder Gods were initially created, just like it was shown in Thor Volume 1, Annual Issue 10. Because when the planet that would be called Earth was already there and overflowing with the power and potential for life, that power and that energy itself eventually became self-aware and formed into the demiurge. And then soon after, in a burst of procreation, it created the beings who we now know as the Elder Gods. But we find out here that not only did the demiurge do this with a facial expression like he was about to drop a banger, making Elder Gods like, damn son, where'd you find this? But with the creation of these beings, like Chthon, Gia, Set, and countless others, this was also the beginning for both Toranos and his brother, the magic maker Loki, as they were initially created alongside of all the other Elder Gods, where from their creation they saw each other and they knew each other as the first gods, the first siblings, and also the first foes. Which again, with the way that this starts out, it's pretty much giving us a retelling of Dawn of the Gods, though in this case, the storyteller is giving us a brand new perspective in a couple really interesting places. Cause for one, this time around, it's shown to us as if Toranos and his brother Magic Maker Loki were the first two of all these Elder Gods to throw hands. But much like the original telling, every last one of them began to fight each other with the exception of Gia, who over time believed that her siblings would destroy the new life that was forming on the earth before it could have a chance to grow. And as the story goes, Gia meditated about how she can bring good into this world that she loved, and eventually she came up with the idea of having a child with the demiurge, which is when she gave birth to a tomb. But in this case, we don't go that far into the story. We really just stop with Gia considering what her plan's going to be, and this time around, when we come to that point, the storyteller lets us know that this is when she went on to teach a new cycle that would work like a wheel that turned, but with each turning it would be made new, which from here takes us back into the present day, back to the gray area of the moon, where Thor and the all-new Thor core are going up against Toranos. And as we go into this, I want you guys to keep in mind the introduction that we were given, because though it's not the full story of the Elder Gods, it's really more of a prologue that the storyteller is bringing up as a bit of foreshadowing, with the main focus being on seasons and the cycle where with every turn, things are made new. Because when we come back and we see Jane passing Mjolnir to Loki, and Loki passing Mjolnir to Storm, and Storm to Beta Ray Bill, which again, like we saw, this is Thor's plan for him to share his power with everyone here, because with lifting his hammer, they all wield his power for 60 seconds before they have to touch the hammer again. But also it's pointed out to us by the storyteller that this plan of Thor's is much like the wheel or the cycle that was created by Gia ages ago to save the world. But with everyone passing Mjolnir around and taking turns on who gets the next clear shot, to Toranos he describes it like he's being stung multiple times, which isn't to say that this plan is not effective, but getting hit with the hammer on top of everyone else, shooting lightning at him and getting their turn with the hammer, it's all adding up, like he feels it. But the insane thing that happens right here, and there's a few insane moments with this one, but one of the things that happens here is Toranos throws the Wheel of Fate at Jane, who's one of the worst people to challenge with Mjolnir. When I say worst, I'm talking about she's one of the last people that you want to contest when she has Thor's hammer. But as Toranos throws the Wheel of Fate at her, she throws Mjolnir at the Wheel of Fate, and Mjolnir cracks it. So right there, Thor, he starts to taunt Toranos, saying how Mjolnir is the strongest of all hammers and eager to rend the skull of a titan. And it has Toranos eager to try this power for himself. And with seeing this, Beta Ray Bill tells Loki to wait, and he tries to stop Loki before Loki uses his turn to attack. Which on the surface it may seem like Loki just blew it here, because right after he throws Mjolnir, Toranos catches it and he holds the hammer long enough for everyone's power to fade one by one, which now switches things up to where just Thor and Storm are the only Thunderers left. And Beta Ray Bill expresses confusion, because it doesn't make sense to him how Toranos could even lift the hammer, let alone hold it. And really what looks like a bad situation, it starts to look a lot worse, because next Thor tells Toranos, "I judge you worthy of the power of Thor," which now gives Toranos Thor's power on top of his own, which now just has Beta Ray Bill like, oh man, Thor done threw the whole fight. And Jane admits that she's a bit worried too, But off over to the side, Loki is more or less like, let Thor cooketh. Cause it's here where we see that not only was Loki's throw intentional, but also there's a reason why Thor gave Toranos his power. And we see precisely what that reasoning was. When Thor tells Toranos, before he gets all happy and celebrates, Thor has one question for him. And it's, what is the power of Thor? And right away, Thor just goes on to answer the question by telling Toranos that his greatest power and his greatest strength is knowledge of how to use his power well, with passion, with constraint, with nobility, with hard-won wisdom, and most of all, with humility, which is something that's been an ongoing theme for Thor that you could say has been going on for a while now. Because from Thor Volume 6, when we got the return of Odin, the death of Odin, and then the funeral of Odin, you could tell how after Odin's death, the burden of Thor figuring out what kind of king he was going to be, it increased exponentially, and it started him on a path of needing to implement more wisdom. And there was a number of times before the funeral where we got glimpses of this, like in God of Hammers just after Odin died. But for me, it wasn't until Thor had to truly let go of Odin, when Odin actually marched into Valhalla. At the conclusion of Blood of the Fathers, where we saw the challenges that Thor faced from here would ask of him to acquire a deeper wisdom to overcome an enemy or an obstacle that seemed too great for him to handle, like we saw when he fought Mythos in the 2023 Thor Annual Issue 1. And from the Thor Annual going into Immortal Thor, it was from this point where we began to see him really walk into it and painfully learn these new lessons that would allow him to take his abilities to the next level. And fast forward to this series, now we're focusing on Thor doing more of that work to get more of that hard-won wisdom that he was just talking about. So in a lot of ways, Thor's now going through his own version of what Odin had to go through to become a wise and powerful king. Because much like Odin, the wisdom is the key component. But right now, with Thor giving Toranos his power, along with it he gives Toranos his conviction, which right away causes Toranos to see himself and nearly beg for Thor to take the hammer back, which 1 minute later causes him to turn back into regular Toranos as far as his power. But as far as him being enlightened with the wisdom and the conviction, that doesn't go away, because what's been seen cannot be unseen. And right here as Toranos is converting back to his regular self, just before he leaves, he tells Thor that he had only done what he was bid to do, what he was loosed on the earth to do, at the command of his brother, the magic maker, Utgard Loki, as well as the woman who first sealed him away, Thor's mother, Gia. And as soon as Thor hears this, he's like, wait a minute, because Toranos just drops this information bomb on him and he's out. And it now has Thor curious to know what his mother's up to and why she's working with the magic maker Utgard Loki. But just after Toranos leaves, Storm does a rundown of the plan they just pulled off, because practically Thor made Toranos want the hammer. He gave him the hammer, and then he infected him with the hammer in the agony of conscience. Which for some reason when Storm says that, it reminds me of the old starter hat commercials. But nonetheless, she tells Thor it was an elegant trick when she asks him, like, did he really need her to play it? And he just tells her, yeah, because the best way for this plan to work was with people who knew Mjolnir best. And he goes on to let her know that he's got to make it up to her, since he did pull her away from her own war. And if she wants him to head back to Araco and fight with her, he'll do it. All she needs to do is say the word. But Storm just lets him know that that wouldn't work, because her people would take it as more of an insult if Thor stepped in as an outsider into their conflict. But Storm does let him know that she'll take a ride back with those magic winds, because it'll save her the long trip. In this way, she can arrive in the Valley of the Fallen with an heroic entry and rally the troops. And through the course of this, Thor's just like, consider it done. And he more or less asks her if that's it, because really a ride back, that's nothing. It's literally the least he could do. So before Storm leaves, she tells Thor, for now, just keep Orcus on your enemies list, and to hook her up with an heroic entrance so she can rally the troops. So he sends her away with the magic winds, while letting Storm know that he does owe her a debt, and it's one that he will pay back with greater measure. And just after this, when Beta Ray Bill leaves, Thor admits that he regrets not being there for Beta Ray Bill when he needed him in the way that Bill showed up for him here. And this really just marks the beginning of the two of them getting back on good terms since the events of Thor Volume 6. And next with Jane, before she leaves, she admits to Thor that she'd come here from Valhalla with the warning of a dark fate linked to Mjolnir, which Odin warned her not to warn Thor about, because Odin believes the more that Thor knows, it'll all just lead him closer to his doom. But Jane couldn't not tell him. And what she's referring to, it's mainly the events going on in Avengers Inc., which is also written by Al Ewing, because over there you got the return of Hank Pym, who's been presumed to be dead for quite some time, cooking up a ton of shenanigans in the background. but also in that series, which for the most part is a separate story from this. For the most part, because it was over there where Odin told Jane that Scourge had a vision of a warrior wielding an axe and a hammer facing his bloody end. So Odin sent Scourge back from Valhalla through a back door of his own making to get Scourge to handle it. Because again, Odin believes that telling Thor is only going to make it worse by leading Thor into that fate. And while Valkyrie's here, she sees Death's orb over Thor's head, but as it stands right now, it's only indicating danger and not his death. Not yet. And aside from this, another thing that's been cooking up in the background, it's the plans of Dario Agger, who's returned after the events of Immortal Hulk, where now he's made a number of acquisitions so that Roxxon could own the rights to nearly a century of true stories so that he can recreate the truth as he sees it. And in case if you're wondering why he's looking so crazy these days, I have a link down in the description that'll take you to what we talked about during Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk when Zemnu, the first Hulk, returned and gave Dario a bit of a rearrangement. But as it stands right now, we still don't know his full plan in its entirety, aside from him obtaining god-level control, of course. But much like Jane had mentioned, with Odin returning Scourge from Valhalla by sending him back to the land of the living to save Thor from what he saw in his dream, this now brings Scourge over to Roxxon with the hopes of convincing Dario Agger to keep Thor alive. And I gotta admit, if this is going where I think it's going, or even remotely in that direction, it's gonna be wild, because this could possibly be the case where Utgard Loki has been manipulating Dario Agger for some time, because I just can't get over the similarities of Dario's more recent appearance and how much it resembles that Loki. And not only him, because also if it turns out that we're really dealing with Dario Agger versus the God of Stories Loki, then this could circle back around to the creation of the Elder Gods themselves. So yeah, I got a feeling that Al Ewing is cooking something crazy here. And the last thing that we see just before this ends is Enchantress making her way to Roxxon as well. But like I mentioned before, we still don't know all the details of what exactly is cooking up here. But man, it's smelling good. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below where you can go to patreon.com/Dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.